Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of the ACT Party to oppose the Ngaiwa o Maniapoto Waipa River Bill, the Ngati Porou Claims Settlement Bill and the Ngati Pahauwera Treaty Claims Settlement Bill. ACT opposes these bills as they are a radical departure from the principle of one law for all. ACT believes in fair and final settlements to treaty grievances, which is why we have in the past sent treaty settlement bills to select committees. However, on this occasion, ACT cannot, in good conscience, do the same with these bills. Let me first outline why ACT will oppose the Waipa River Bill. Part 2 of the bill will extend a co-governance framework to parts of the Waikato River, including the Waipa River. Co-governance is a affront to the principle of equality before the law, something that ACT has championed for over a decade. The co-governance framework will provide legal mechanisms for Maniapoto to participate in the governance and the management of the Waipa River. It forces local authorities to put in place, Mr Speaker, joint management agreements covering functions of the Resource Management Act. The activities of people who use the Waipa River are currently regulated by elected officials, Mr Speaker. If they object to the management of the river, they have the simple option of voting the officials out of office. If this bill is passed, users of the river will also be regulated by officials within Maniapoto, officials who are not elected and are not accountable to the users of the river. This is not democracy. This is not one law for all, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the bad news does not end with the Waipa River Bill. The government seems intent on replicating
Point of order, Honourable Parakura Horomia.
Mr Speaker, I've never heard so much trite and this bordering on
that's not a point of order. That is not a point of order. The member will sit down. It's a debatable point.
Good choice.
John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The government seems intent on replicating the undemocratic model of co-governance in its other treaty settlements. In Minister Finlayson's own press release announcing the Ngati Porou deed of settlement last December, he boasted that the settlement would provide, quote, Ngati Porou with input into the strategic governance of specific conservation sites, unquote. Clause 45 of the bill forces resource consent authorities to provide Ngati Porou with a summary of applications for resource consent in the same way they would have to do for an affected person as defined under the Resource Management Act. Instead of only consulting iwi, who are actually affected by the RMA activity, authorities must now give certain iwi special consultation rights over and above the rights afforded to other New Zealanders. There is no way for the government to deny that this bill forms a co-governance framework. Clauses 23 to 31 provide for, in the government's own words, ngā whaka waiho taiaruku, which translates directly to dual authority. This is not democracy. This is not one law for all. Of similar concern is the Ngati Pahauwera Treaty Claims Settlement Bill. The agreement in principle states that cultural redress should include co-management regimes over parts of the Mohaka, Waikari and Waiho rivers. As with the Ngati Porou Agreement, Clause 64 of this bill requires local authorities to forward applications for resource consents in each of the 3 rivers to iwi. Again, instead of having a duty to simply consult all New Zealanders according to the same process, authorities will be forced to consult iwi separately. The Ngati Pahauwera Development Trust must also be appointed as an advisory committee in relation to the fisheries activities of the Mohaka River. Instead of fisheries activities being regulated by elected officials, they will now be regulated by unelected, unaccountable officials who are appointed simply because they are part of the right iwi. This is not democracy. This is not one law for all. ACT first rose to speak against co-governance.
Point of order, Honourable Parakura Horomia.
Mr Speaker, the Speaker has waxed lyrical about who's been elected and who was unelected, And he's just come through the dire experience of his leader being elected when he wasn't even in the organisation.
I'm on my feet. What is your point of order? These are debating matters.
No consistency.
There's no point of order. John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Instead of fisheries activities being regulated by elected officials, they'll now be regulated by unelected, unaccountable officials who are appointed simply because they are part of the right iwi. This is not democracy. This is not one law for all. ACT first rose to speak against co-governance and treaty legislation when the Waikato River Settlement Bill was before the House last year. ACT said then that governance should be the preserve of elected representatives. Iwi representatives are not elected by the general public, nor are they accountable to the public. ACT strongly opposes the recent trends towards co-governance arrangements and treaty settlements. ACT has always called for fair and final treaty settlements. If the bills before the House simply addressed historical grievances, as past settlements did, ACT would certainly support them to select committee. What we do not and will not support is Parliament legislating for two standards of citizenship. Treaty settlement legislation should be about righting past wrongs. It should not become a rubber stamp to the carving up of our nation's rivers and conservation sites. ACT believes strongly in having one law for all and will be voting against these bills. Mr. Speaker, let me also go on to record that when I rose to speak on this bill, or these three bills, I was greeted by a constant barrage of heckling and criticism. And let me say, Mr. Speaker, to members in this House and to members in the gallery, there is no political party more dedicated to righting the wrongs and solving our social crises than the ACT Party. Mr. Speaker, we have championed the rights of 16 and 17-year-old young Maori people, sir, the right for them to go out and get an apprenticeship and earn $8 or $10 an hour. And when we asked the Minister of Social Development last week in question time, she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge it was better to have a young Maori, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I'll hear the member, but if you're trifling with my previous rulings by entering a debating point, I might require the member to leave the chamber.
Mr. Speaker,
I don't want these interruptions unless they're bona fide points. Now, I'll hear the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I think there was total irrelevance when he started talking about the $8 to $10 per hour. What relevance is that to this bill?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Look, I'll rule on that point of order. That's a debating point. John Boscawen.
Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by saying to members, particularly in the gallery, that there is no party in Parliament who believes it will do more with its policies to help young, unemployed Maori than those in the ACT Party, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Honourable Tau Henare.
Speaker, I know I've been around just a wee bit longer than that member, but I'm pretty sure that you're not allowed to bring the gallery into the debate.
No, well, in actual fact, you can't address the gallery, but I guess members can refer in the context of the bill to who might be present, but you're not allowed to specifically address people in the gallery. The point is well made, because I think the member was getting pretty close to doing that. John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by saying that the ACT Party, more than any other political party in this Parliament, wants to make a difference, wants to solve the country's growing social problems. And we had a situation, Mr. Speaker, last Thursday where the Minister of Social Development absolutely struggled to stop herself from acknowledging far better to have a young Maori apprentice earning $10 an hour than sitting at home on the unemployment benefit.
Point of order, Honourable Tau Henare.
Speaker, I asked you to see where the relevance of those statements are to the kaupapa that is before the House right at the moment.
Well, I think various members have talked about the bill as making a way for prosperity for Maoridom, and I think in the context of that, the member is making some points. I guess it's up to members to make that judgment, but I think he's in the same sort of territory, albeit a bit looser than some previous members would be. John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not just the members in this House, Mr. Speaker, but the members of the New Zealand public. And my message to the people of New Zealand is that we need to solve our social problems. You don't solve social problems by setting up an arrangement of co-governance, Mr. Speaker. You actually look at the issue and you address the underlying cause, sir. And it's a pity the Minister of Social Development couldn't actually bring herself to acknowledge. It took 3 points of order to get her to acknowledge that she'd much rather have someone on an apprenticeship, Mr. Speaker, than on the unemployment benefit, sir. And I'm very proud to be the parliamentary leader of the ACT Party, Mr. Speaker. We oppose these bills, but we certainly don't oppose policies that will actually address the underlying causes of problems in New Zealand. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.